Hello everyone, and welcome to the Animation Therapist channel. In this episode, we will be discussing the effect of being in a relationship with a narcissist or someone with a narcissistic personality disorder. Over time, a lot of people going through relationship distress most time believe that their partner is a narcissist. In this episode, we will explore who a narcissist is, the behavioral attributes of a narcissist, and the effects narcissism has on its victim. To do justice to this discussion is Dr. Palmer, who is a frequent guest on this platform. Welcome to the Animation Therapist channel, once again Dr. Palmer.
Thank you for having me on the Animation Therapist channel.
Yeah, let's go into the business of the day. Who exactly is a narcissist?
A narcissist is a person who exhibits excessive self-involvement, a need for admiration, and a lack of empathy for others. They tend to have inflated views of themselves, their abilities, and their importance. They may exhibit characteristics like, they believe they are superior to others and deserve special treatment, which is grandiosity. They may crave admiration and attention and can become aggressive or defensive when they don't receive it. Narcissistic individuals also struggle to form healthy relationships because they are unable to prioritize others' needs or accept responsibility for their actions. In addition, narcissists often engage in manipulative or exploitative behavior, using others to meet their own needs without regard for the impact on those around them. They also exhibit behaviors like resenting others' successes and achievements, displaying haughty, condescending behavior, and becoming defensive or even vengeful when faced with criticism or defeat. These highlighted attributes are consistent with narcissism. It is also important to know that narcissism is a spectrum, with some people exhibiting mild narcissistic traits while others have more severe traits. It is also worthy of note that everyone can exhibit some of these traits at times, but a narcissist consistently displays these behaviors over time. The word, consistency, is important in the middle of this.
Thank you Dr. Palmer for that detailed explanation. Going forward, I believe our viewers will like to know, is it a problem to be a narcissist?
Being a narcissist can certainly be problematic, both for the individual and for those around them. While some degree of self-confidence and assertiveness can be healthy, excessive or severe narcissism can lead to problems in a person's personal and professional life. Narcissists often struggle to form lasting, healthy relationships. They can be controlling, manipulative, and excessively and unreasonably demanding, which can make it difficult for others to be around them. Narcissists may have difficulty accepting feedback or collaborating with others, which can make it challenging for them to succeed in their careers. Narcissists may struggle with depression, anxiety, or substance abuse issues as a result of their inability to cope with criticism, failure, or their inability to assume absolute control over others.
Since you've been speaking, you have touched on narcissistic traits repeatedly. We would like to know if these narcissistic traits are hereditary or learned.
There are two sides to this. The answer is that both hereditary and learned factors can contribute to the development of narcissistic traits. Research suggests that there may be a genetic component to narcissism. For example, children of parents with narcissistic personality disorder are more likely to develop narcissistic traits themselves. Also, early childhood experiences, such as being excessively praised or excessively criticized, can contribute to the development of narcissistic traits. Children who grow up in environments that are either neglectful or overly indulgent may also develop narcissistic traits.
What's the major difference between a narcissist and someone with narcissistic personality disorder?
Yeah, I think there is a difference between someone who exhibits narcissistic traits and someone with narcissistic personality disorder. One of the differentiating factors is in terms of severity and persistence of the symptoms. Narcissism refers to a set of personality traits that can be present in anyone to varying degrees, while narcissistic personality disorder, on the other hand, is a diagnosable mental health disorder that only a qualified mental health professional can diagnose. Other ways to distinguish these two concepts could be that narcissistic trait can be present in people without narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissistic trait may also be situational or temporary, may not significantly impair daily life or relationships. Whereas in narcissistic personality disorder, it is a chronic and pervasive mental disorder, meets specific diagnostic criteria, significantly impairs social, occupational, or personal functioning, and affects relationships, work, and daily life. Let me use this analogy to help illustrate the difference. I want us to see narcissistic traits as a coat that we wear on occasion, while narcissistic personality disorder is like a permanent tattoo that colors your entire personality behavior.
Thank you for using that illustration. It helps simplify our ability to digest your explanation. I will like to ask you this question. Can you tell us the gender variations among narcissists?
Research suggests that there are some gender differences in the prevalence and expression of narcissistic traits. Men are more likely to display narcissistic traits and to be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. Women tend to display narcissistic traits in more covert ways, such as by being highly competitive or manipulative, rather than overtly self-centered. Men are more likely to display overt forms of narcissism, such as grandiosity and entitlement, while women are more likely to display covert forms of narcissism, such as hypersensitivity and emotional coldness. Men are more likely to display narcissistic traits in situations where they have power or authority, such as in the workplace or in romantic relationships. Women are more likely to display narcissistic traits in response to perceived threats or insecurities, such as a fear of aging or losing control. Men with narcissistic traits are more likely to be aggressive and arrogant, while women with narcissistic traits are more likely to be passive-aggressive and manipulative. Studies have found that men with narcissistic traits tend to have fewer and less satisfying romantic relationships, while women with narcissistic traits tend to have more unstable and less satisfying romantic relationships. Men with narcissistic traits are more likely to engage in risky or impulsive behaviors, such as drug or alcohol abuse, while women with narcissistic traits are more likely to engage in self-destructive behaviors, such as self-harm or eating disorders.
That's eye-opening. Let's now delve into the core discussion. I want you to explain to us in detail the effect of being in a relationship with a narcissist.
That's a good question. The first effect I will mention is the feelings of doubt. The victim of a narcissist, whether they are still in a narcissistic relationship or have escaped it, will be left feeling copious amounts of self-doubt. You may find that you constantly seek clarification or assurance, just to ensure you haven't made a mistake. This is a very common effect of narcissistic abuse because the abuser conditions their victim to carry the burden of blame, and is always quick to point fingers at them. This always leads to self-doubt, and this usually hinders progress at work and when the individual is trying to forge relationships with new people. I have had victims of narcissistic relationships say things like, "I am uncertain of myself and my ability to make the right choices." They always felt guilt and blame for things that were often not their fault, or out of their control. They engage in the cognitive distortion called personalization. These doubtful feelings they have towards themselves usually hold them back from finding any enjoyment in life. They often seek validation from others to affirm that they are doing the right thing, or that their choices were the right ones to make. This negative after effect of the abuse was born from the fact that, during the relationship, such individual has had to accept responsibility for the things they didn't say or do. It's almost a borrowed humiliation from the narcissist that the individual still carried with themselves, even after the relationship has ended. Another after effect such an individual may be left with is dissociation. Victims of narcissistic abuse tend to detach or disassociate from their surroundings, emotions, and even their own body. This is a form of unhealthy coping mechanism to help them survive the overwhelming, hurtful, and confusing emotional abuse that they endure. Disassociation plays a pivotal part in traumatic situations. For some individuals who find themselves in a relationship with a narcissist, they tend to find the situation emotionally overwhelming. This in the long time could lead to the brain automatically numbing their emotions, just to help them endure the toxic circumstances. Emotional repression almost becomes a way of life for them, just to escape from the horrific reality.
When explaining dissociation, you touched on emotional repression. Can you explain briefly what that means?
Emotional repression is a common coping mechanism that many people use to avoid feeling uncomfortable emotions. It is the conscious or unconscious suppression of emotions, thoughts, and memories that are deemed uncomfortable, painful, or unacceptable. Emotional repression can be executed in the form of refusing to acknowledge or accept certain emotions or experiences. It could also entail an individual consciously pushing away or hiding emotions. Emotional repression can also be manifested by attributing one's unacceptable thoughts or feelings to someone else and creating excuses and justifications to avoid confronting emotions. It is a form of coping strategy that can help individuals deal with difficult emotions in the short term but can have negative consequences in the long term. Repressed emotions can build up over time and eventually lead to outbursts of anger, sadness, anxiety, depression, or PTSD. Repressing emotions can cause physical symptoms such as headaches, stomachaches, or insomnia. Emotional repression can also lead to difficulty forming and maintaining relationships, as people may struggle to communicate their needs and feelings.
Thank you, Dr. Palmer, for that clarification. Now you have mentioned two effects of being in a narcissistic relationship. You talked about feelings of self-doubt and dissociation. Can you please share with us more of those effects?
Absolutely. Another effect of being in a narcissistic relationship is that it makes you set aside your own needs, wants, and desires. They begin to place less priority on their self-care. Being in a relationship with a narcissist can often feel like you are simply there, just to fulfill their needs, and help them with their agenda. If you think back to when you first met your narcissistic partner, it may seem like they doted on you, and the world revolved around you. Of course, reality soon hits, and you realize that you will never truly satisfy them, no matter how hard you try. In the meantime, such individual has had to forget about their own needs and wants, for the most part, just to ensure they pacify the abuser. They may have stopped partaking in hobbies, sacrificed some friendships, or they may have forgotten about their life goals in their mission to satisfy the narcissist. Let's move to the next one. One of the more unspoken effects of narcissistic abuse is the detriment it has on one's physical health. While narcissistic abuse is associated with the emotional and mental trauma you endure, there's no denying the impact it can have on your physical health as well. As a result of the chronic abuse such individuals suffer at the hands of the narcissistic partner or boss, they may begin to experience a significant amount of weight loss or excessive weight gain. Some will tell you they feel anxious, nervous, and apprehensive, and may even show little or no interest in eating. They may be flooded with anxiety that spans from when they wake up until they go to sleep. For some, the effect is significant. If they do manage to get to sleep, it would be a very broken sleep, which can be occasioned with horrible nightmares, drifting in and out of terrible dreams. Some may wake up in the middle of the night and may be unable to get back to sleep. They would then lay awake, thinking about all of the narcissistic things their partner or ex-narcissistic partner had done to them, trying to work out what was so wrong with them, and how they could make it right. In summary, their physical health may be significantly affected. They tend to fall sick more often, moving in and out of hospital, battling with high blood pressure, or other physical illnesses. Another side effect of narcissism is the huge sense of mistrust. This usually comes after the relationship has ended, where you then see every person as a threat. Because of your experience with the narcissist, you begin to worry about the intentions of other people, even ones you have known for quite some time. A normal person would be naturally cautious, but a victim of narcissistic abuse becomes hyper-diligent when it comes to vetting people. Since you were duped before by somebody who appeared to have your best interests at heart, you now have a hard time trusting anyone. Sadly, all too often, you also begin to have a hard time trusting yourself. As well as the anxiety that comes with being in a narcissistic relationship, often depression and a sense of hopelessness accompany this. Unbearable and inescapable circumstances envelop you, and you don't see a way out. This concept of learned helplessness, which is learned from the way the narcissist treats you, makes day-to-day living a struggle. Unfortunately, this can see some abuse victims engage in self-harm as a coping mechanism.
Oh, that's interesting. You mentioned of learned helplessness. Can you please explain further what that means?
Alright, learned helplessness is a psychological concept that occurs when a person believes they have no control over a situation, even if they do have the ability to change it. It's like when you have tried and failed so many times, that you just give up and accept your fate, even if there might be a way out. Once this is established in individuals, it can be very difficult for them to break out of that pattern. They may continue to believe that they are powerless, even when new opportunity arise.
Thank you for explaining that psychological concept. You can now continue with the other effects.
The sixth effect I will talk about is that Narcissistic abusers isolate their victims. However, some victims will also isolate themselves, due to feeling embarrassed and ashamed about what they're going through. From experience gathered from working with such clients, I understand the fear of victim blaming, and the black and white misconceptions of many people who don't understand abuse or its effects. In an attempt not to put themselves through the trauma of being invalidated by those who have no idea of what they are going through, they end up isolating themselves. They can't bear the idea of traumatizing themselves by opening up to somebody about the toxic and abusive relationship, only for the person they opened up to dismiss it as being their fault. Most people will blame them for staying, saying it's their fault for entering a relationship with somebody like that. Blame them for not making their partner happy enough to treat them with respect. They usually have a long list of responses they are afraid of getting or receiving from others. This usually cultivated a need for them to self-isolate. If this sounds familiar to you, isolating yourself so nobody knows the true extent of what you're going through is not the best way to manage the situation. The fear of judgment stops you from reaching out for help. I understand the need to withdraw from others to avoid this, and self-isolation is another sad side effect of narcissistic abuse. But you can always reach out to a mental health professional to get help. Victims of narcissism tend to adopt self-destructive thoughts and behaviors. You might find that you ruminate over the things your abuser has said or done, replaying their negative words to you over and over in your head. This then generates a pattern of negative self-talk, which can lead to self-destructive or self-sabotaging behavior. The narcissist programs a negative thought pattern into their victim, leading them down a path of unhealthy self-talk and self-perception. Because of the put-downs and hypercriticism they are exposed to, as well as the narcissist instilling a sense of shame into them, the victim can tend to punish themselves. They can do this by sabotaging the dreams, goals, aspirations, or career achievements. The reason for this is that the abuser has ensured the victim feels so worthless that they don't feel they deserve anything good. This, in turn, can leave victims hesitant to do the things they love, for fear of achieving success with them. Narcissists are quite often envious of their victims, and anything that makes them feel inferior to their victims will result in them being jealous and bitter. This negative reaction from the abuser regarding their victim's talents, interests, and hobbies, conditions the victim to associate these things with resentful and cruel behavior from the narcissist. This begrudging conditioning makes the victim avoid any successes, hobbies, or activities that make them happy, for fear they'll be met with spiteful and callous reactions from their abuser. This can result in the victim becoming anxious, depressed, and severely lacking in confidence. The victim may now try to be a wallflower, avoid any kind of spotlight, and avoid chasing any successes for fear of reprisal. If this sounds like something you're going through, or have been through, just remember that the abuser isn't resentful and critical of your gifts or successes because they think you're incompetent or inferior. It's because they feel threatened by them. Anything that threatens their control and ego, they'll try to destroy. Another very sad, yet prevalent, effect of narcissism is where the victim protects their abuser. The victim may even try to deny the abuser's behavior so much that they end up gaslighting themselves. This minimizing and rationalizing of the abuser's behavior acts as a survival mechanism for the victim. In order to play down the emotional dissonance that appears when someone who's supposed to love you mistreats you, victims of narcissism abuse can often convince themselves that the abuse isn't that bad, or that they must have done something to provoke their mistreatment.
These are valuable information that you've communicated to us, Dr. Palmer. We have to end this episode at this point. I believe that in the subsequent episode we will explore what trauma bonding is, and how to manage a narcissistic relationship. And if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section, or send it via our email. I believe you have learned quite a lot from this episode. Kindly like, comment and share this video. And if you are yet to subscribe to the Animation Therapist channel, please do so as to be able to reach out to more people, and create more mental health awareness. Thank you for watching, and look out for the next